Welcome to Builders, the podcast for leaders who want to build great companies. I'm your host, Alex Snyder, strategic advisor to world-class builders. This podcast dives into the wild rides and personal transformations that come with pursuing big dreams and becoming a leader who builds incredible teams and companies. Each episode, I'm joined by a guest who helps deliver a fresh perspective designed to leave you feeling less lonely, more connected to innovative ideas, and inspired about growing your business your way. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite channel, leave us a 5-star review, and share your favorite episode with a friend. The podcast is sponsored by Alex Snyder Advisory. If you are a business leader or executive team ready to take your leadership and company to the next level with a high-performing team, we'd love to see how we can rocket fuel your growth. Check out the show notes to book your free Builders Business Booster call, where you'll receive a strategic leadership audit and 3 concrete focus areas to mature and grow your business. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Let's build. Willo, thank you so much for being here with us all the way from Dubai, right?
Yes, currently. I go to Thailand on Saturday, but I'm here for the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, it's incredible. I love it. Willo, you've been called a lot of things: an oracle, an alchemist, a liberator, and a doula for hatching big ideas. I know you as an incredible international speaker, an animal-loving nomad like myself, and a well-regarded coach on rewiring, energy, mindset, and more. And you're about to add author to that list. I can't wait to dig into it all. Before we jump in, can you give a bit of introduction and background to expand on who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, the first 10 of which I had launched and co-founded several businesses, a few startups, a product line, had done a lot of different things. And 10 years into it, I really realized I wanted to work on the deeper heart-centered transformational work and this kind of inner work that comes with being an entrepreneur. And so that's what I got certified in, is very like somatic, deep heart-centered coaching work. And here we are 10 years later, and I'm still doing that. And the upcoming book you mentioned is really based on this body of work that I've learned coaching visionary entrepreneurs over the last 10 years.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. We have a lot of visionary entrepreneurs who join us, so I think this can be amazing. So you said you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, but your work is really grounded in spirituality. So how do these interplay from your experience, and what's your perspective on entrepreneurship as a spiritual path?
Yeah, not only is, I believe, spiritual and personal growth like required, I feel like nobody is exempt from it on the entrepreneurial path, right? Whether you like it or not. But I also believe it's really the foundation upon which sustainable and meaningful business is built. So like ultimately, entrepreneurship is relationships, right? It's all relationships. And that starts with your relationship with yourself, and first and foremost. And then, of course, it's like your clients, your team members, and then your relationship with time and money and all of those things. That's multidimensional, right? So all of those things require this ability to know yourself and have that perspective as you navigate the challenges.
That's a great perspective. I love how you said not just relationships with people, but actually with construct like time and money.
Yeah, that's right. We can really struggle with those things just as much as and that's all that relationship with yourself and mindset. And powerful.
I think that's so interesting. And I can relate. Time is absolutely something I think most of us can understand. The relationship is maybe a little fraught at times. Certainly how I see time and how I treat time has changed through my career, my own personal journey. I know something that comes up a lot, particularly for female entrepreneurs, actually money mindset, like how we relate to money, the fact that we're only a generation or two out of women really not being, allowed to even talk about money or have
to, yeah,
about
like to have agency around it. Absolutely. This is big, especially when it comes to power and really being a woman that can actually have that agency and that sovereignty and power. We are in the midst of a massive reclaiming in that realm. And this is precisely why I love to work with women entrepreneurs who are so heart-centered and empathetic and so brilliant. I'm like, no, we need power in your hand.
Yeah. And there's such a coming back to that because I know as someone who came through the male business world and had a very male influenced way of working and operating to see this, I would call it a resurgence because I do think it has existed a long time ago of women operating in a way that like really resonates and having power and not having to emulate a different way of being in order to be successful. How does that play into your work? Is that something?
Yeah, I think a beautiful way to take it out of it being like man versus woman is just really to look at it through the lens of like masculine and feminine energy. And this, we can talk about everything from through the lens of consensual, right? Because ultimately, when we speak about power, that's the negative uses of power. The blatant misuse of power has been non-consensual and therefore has had this taking, raping, pillaging vibe that so many women can not only have been victims of it, but also would never, ever want to be a part of, right? Not that there's not a massive deconditioning and unlearning that we're all having to do under this guise, but what I focus on in my work is coming into this loving union between that masculine and feminine. And you just brought up a really great point, right? Like I also feel like I can run a lot of masculine energy and my get shit done. And that at the same time, though, I have this really amazing softness and intuitiveness. And to me, I feel like it's just knowing how to have a union with those. So again, they're not fighting or one of them isn't completely ignored.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's something I didn't have the words for it for a lot of my career. And I ran, I would say, very heavy on the masculine energy, but I think there was always a nuance to it that was really picked up on and really supported my success, which I didn't realize. I was just like, I'm doing the thing. And I worked in at times all male teams. I'd be one woman and 50 plus people. That softness, I think, informed the, like you said, it balanced masculine energy in a way that really supported my leadership and my growth in my corporate world and into startup life. And then more recently, when I started having the words for it and understanding also your time in your office and your team versus your time at home. And I realized that running on my more masculine energy 24 hours a day was exhausting. Like I needed to find a way to have an environment at some point in my day and my week where I could be a softer version and I could let things go, because otherwise I was running. It was like your switch is on turbo constantly. And maybe it's an age thing, but I just got to the point where I was like, I cannot do this.
It's
Even
not
though I'm
sustainable.
I'm not doing, I've made all these changes, but just energetically, I'm so drained for being in that, take care of everything and everyone in every realm.
Yep, and so much of my work is really coming back into alignment, looking at where things, what needs your attention, what is, out of alignment is the best way to say it, because ultimately, if you are overworking or ignoring anything, or if you're pushing too hard or completely abandoning in anything, it's going to be imbalanced, right? So we need to really come back into this alignment. And sometimes I think that we don't know, we can't see it ourselves, which I know we're going to get into a little bit.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was just thinking of. This sounds amazing. And I can imagine people are wondering, how do we cultivate this? How do you help entrepreneurs navigate the challenge? And in the same vein, you and I both know the value of support, right? Our role is supporting others, speed, efficiency, objectivity, but maybe while you're talking about how you support people, do we need a coach, or are there some things that people can explore on their own? What's your experience been with that?
Yeah. So I always say in my work that I am guiding you to the wisdom of your own truth. So never am I probably stand on the biggest soapbox for we need support. I strongly and firmly believe that we're not here to do it alone, but I also don't believe that there's one way and that you absolutely have to. In fact, a lot of this book that I'm writing is about putting these tools in your hands. I want people to have it's almost like emotional intelligence, right? When you have more emotional intelligence, more awareness within, you're going to be that much more capable. It doesn't mean you'll never need anyone ever, but if we can strengthen those muscles in you first, it's going to take you that much further. And then a lot of the times I say, like, we're really, to me, it's like insanely helpful to have a consultant or a coach to help us see what we cannot see. But at minimum, sometimes we just want someone to like simply hold our hands to through it, like through what needs to be done when it feels like it's all just too much to carry on our own. And I think there's a real beauty in the vulnerability and the wisdom that comes from knowing when that is, not outsourcing your power because you have to or you should, but instead making it a conscious choice of, I know I'm going to be able to get further faster and it's just going to be more fun when I have somebody in it with me.
Yes, that's almost exactly the way I frame it as well. I love that. So how are you helping entrepreneurs navigate some of the challenges that you talked about? Kind of what are the ways that you support people?
Yeah. So like I've hinted before is that what I've seen time and time again, I'll bet you have as well. I think we have a lot of similarities in the work that we do, but basically often the solutions to our challenges aren't what we think. And therefore we end up wasting a lot of valuable time and energy, right? And my work and what I really love focusing on is looking at where we get caught up in these like survival strategies or coping. We start like avoiding by leaning on our coping mechanisms more. Pema Chodron, I don't know if you know her, but she has a beautiful book that I always think of this title, Start Where You Are. And she really speaks to this self-compassion that's required to stop and face where we are right now. And that is so much of my work. It's really, again, if you were to if somebody is sidelined maybe by the intensity of entrepreneurship or is navigating some challenges and there is that like extending of your hand to help them through it, there's the first step is just being like, let's just be with where we are right now. Let's like look at how did we get here? What's not working? And then we probably need to redefine what we want, right? And then clarify those steps that we need to do to get back in the game, right? To keep moving forward. And like I said, we often just can't see this for ourselves. I always say we can't see the forest from the trees in our own experience. And this is why it's so helpful to have that, what I call like in my work is the GPS, guidance, perspective, and support.
Oh, I love that. Guidance, perspective, and support, GPS. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that one down. I love it. I wholeheartedly agree. And I love what you said for those listening. Understanding, and maybe it's objectively, or maybe it is clearly enough yourself, where you are is so important. And if you think about it, it's like saying, if you were to look at a ledge and you want to get to a ledge, if you are not clear on where you are, let's say you think you're here and you're actually here and you build a ladder from here to the ledge, that ladder isn't getting you to the edge, right? Like it's a really simplified way to look at it, but are building out plans without a realistic understanding of where you are and what you have at your disposal in terms of resources, setting yourself up for, at the very least, frustration, if not failure. And with my clients, I always coin it as caring objective challenge. It's often,
I love that.
Business, I say, it's not my business. I really care about you and your business, but it's not my business. So I can see it in a way you can't. And I can have the opportunity to challenge you, which will potentially be uncomfortable, but will really push you to get super clear and to answer some of the hard questions that our brains are tricky. It's not that we're intentionally avoiding those. Sometimes we aren't even hearing them because we're so good at just evading.
Yeah. Masterful at that. Yeah.
So I'm sure we would all love the idea, especially in today's world, of like quick fixes, right? One shot deal, take a pill, everything gets better. But I know from my experience, typically these things are not, and I think you would agree. So how can entrepreneurs ensure that they are continuously evolving and maybe evolving consciously and not plateauing? Because sometimes we can make a really big leap and it takes us a while to catch up to that leap, and then it's just grind to a halt.
Yeah. Again, so if I stand on this soapbox and we all need support, I would say the other big one that I constantly are was the premise of exactly what we started with here, right? This like personal and spiritual growth is
Mhm.
doing the inner work. Doing the inner work is just vital. It's so vital for identifying thought and behavior patterns that may be derailing or stalling your progress. Because, like you said, our comfort zones can lull us into this mediocrity for months and years if we're not careful.
Yeah.
One,
And
once those, yeah,
I was gonna say, not to plug another book on your on your episode, but
no worries.
if you read it or listened to it, I did the audiobook and it was phenomenal. It was narrated with a story the entire time and then the sort of research and interviews. And it was a really powerful reminder. And I loved how you said it. Our comfort zones can drag us into mediocrity. And it's true. At the moment I watched that book, for someone who that's like pretty heavily in my growth, I was like, yeah, actually. And it was amazing because I read it and the story is about a trek in Alaska, like survival hunting type thing. And I listened to it the week before I was at Burning Man. And then I ended up trekking out of Burning Man. And I had this in the back of my head of, this is how I remind myself I can do hard things. And by doing this hard physical thing, I will be equipped. And I'm not going to lie, the last 3 weeks since then, I have like, things have soared in all the right. So
I mean,
just,
you're totally hitting on it, which is what I was going to say right before that. You're sharing that is once those like neural pathways have formed like deep grooves in our habits and our beliefs, it can be so hard to shift out of. This is what you experienced really was like this state shift so much so that, and this is why I think it's so powerful to work with a coach, even a personal trainer. I know it's like somebody who trains is like, it helps us see that we are more capable than we know. It helps us get out of those like limiting, like, I can't do it, or even I don't want to do it. All these like stories that we make up. And a lot of this comes back down to identity, making sure that you aren't giving up on what was possible, who it's possible for you to be. And that is why it's insanely helpful to be surrounded by others who move differently or who have experienced where you are, share the same values, and who then now have the life and outcomes that you desire.
yeah, I talk about this all the time. We know it's our evolutionary trend is to want to fit in. So if you know who you want to be, then you need to surround yourself with people that who you want to be will fit in with. Otherwise, you're fighting the tide. Yeah. I think it was someone in our network. It might have been Emil that said, if you want to be a six pack with a millionaire, surround yourself with, if you want to be a millionaire with a six pack, surround yourself with millionaires with six pack. It'll be a lot easier to get there if that is who you are observing and interacting with on a regular basis. And I
Yeah.
love sports analogies and fitness and what you said. For those listening, I always like to try and give different ways of understanding this. So I worked with a trainer to come out of a long stint of being like struggling with injury. And I know a lot about fitness and I've done personal training courses, but I worked with somebody to help guide me objectively to help create a bit of safety as I started doing exercises that potentially were putting my injury at risk, that were a little heavier. And it gave me that confidence that someone else was looking and would stop me if I was doing something too fast or too hard, would be there to catch, literally in this instance, spot me, support me, catch me, help me do that. And I think fitness is a really nice one because even in fitness, people often be like, oh, I worked with a trainer for this, but then I should be fine forever. Like maybe, but maybe at some point you want to learn maybe you want to go from bodybuilding to powerlifting, or maybe you want to train for a triathlon, and that's a new skill. So that would be a time you might bring someone in, or maybe you're fine for a while and then you're like, actually, I'm really comfortable where I am and I'd love to hit a new PR. So maybe I'm going to train with a coach for 3 months, or maybe I want to do bodybuilding competition and now I need more support on how to like intentionally change my physique rather than just get strong and healthy. So
Yeah.
I think those are really great.
Ultimately, it's all connected because really what we're talking about here, and this is really the epicenter of the trifecta that I offer in my book in terms of coming into alignment. The goal, especially as leaders, is embodied leadership. And this is precisely what it is. It's not getting in our own way. It's knowing how to navigate those challenges, come back into alignment. Not the biggest one, I think, is not only not limiting yourself, but having enough self-awareness that you're also able to lead others. Because like I always say, gone are the days of the old sort of very like drill sergeant management. And I loved your post I saw today, I think it was about management versus leadership. And it's exactly that is, yeah, there's management and what needs to get done, but there's also being a leader. And holy cow, like what is required to be a good leader these days is requiring this massive self-awareness and emotional maturity like never before.
Yeah. And I always say command and control is out. And
The power with, as Brene Brown says, she's instead of power over, it's power with. Yeah,
exactly. And I think which if you haven't been through startup world, this probably is still relatable. When you first start a startup, you're usually like a couple people, maybe 3 or 4 if you're really lucky. And there is an element of just kind of barking orders because you're co-creating, you're all there. There is a level of internally, you can just get it done. And externally, you need a little more finesse to sell your idea, but you can get it done. But the second you start bringing people in who were not part of the genesis of that idea, you need to figure out those intrinsic motivators. You need to enable and all the good things that I write about constantly that you talk about in leadership. I won't belabor it, but I'm wondering, without obviously betraying any client confidence, can you give a few examples of some of the shifts that happen and what the awareness that is needed for those shifts to happen?
Yes, I can share one off the top of my head that is specifically a client. She's worked with me off and on for the last year or so. She has a 7-figure business, and she came to me knowing she needed to do some inner work in order for her to get to the next level. And the work that we have done together and this self-awareness that has switched on, I would say she came to me in one of the sentiments that she shares, which I have a video of this actually up on my Instagram where she's sharing it, which is that she found herself 10 years into her business and she loves her business, but also was feeling like burnout, not really loving it. Like something was crunchy going on. And don't I know it? I've been in several different businesses and it's been 20 years. And yeah, sometimes we get not disconnected from that, but that whole like out of alignment and needing to have somebody help us see what we cannot see. So much of the work that we did, ultimately, she'll say, which I really love, she reflected, is that it was so powerful for her to understand what it meant for her to be resourced as a leader. And that ultimately, because she has built this business and she has been the person who's gotten to where it is today, it can be so easy then to keep yourself in the bottleneck of your own business's growth, right? I know you probably know this so well. So it was such a powerful testament to how she really flipped it around and not only started putting herself first physically, but then all the things that need to get implemented for that within her team in order to take herself out of these places where she's still being the glue and the Band-Aids, but then also what else gets to emerge? What then gets to actually emerge? And ultimately, when you're still stuck in the weeds of your business, certainly a 7-figure business that's literally like doubling and tripling, there is so much, your time and your energy needs to be put in different places, right? That really only your leadership can can lead, only the doors that your leadership and your experience can open. And so that I love that question of what else could emerge when you got all that stuff taken care of. And instead you get to be the powerful leader and creator that you're here to be.
Love that. You were just talking about how rapidly things can grow. Sometimes your business is doubling, tripling. I hear mentality a lot out there, which pros and cons. Of course, not everyone is going to be the next unicorn or really wants to be. Growth is typically a key metric of business, right? If you're not growing, you're shrinking. So how do you suggest entrepreneurs handle rapid growth and scaling? Obviously, not looking to give all the trade secrets away, but what are some things that people can do just to support themselves and be, like you said, have that self-awareness?
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, we're not robots, right? We need time. And it's what I really call like this healing and integration, time for healing and integration. And really any time that we are expanding, which is growth, right? So if we even look at it through this lens of anytime you're implementing, anytime you're actually like creating, growing, building, that's this like growth time, but then something expands, whether that be your bottom line or your team or your amount of clients you're serving, whatever that looks like. And so we need that time for integration and sometimes healing because yes, like energetically and emotionally, but also to potentially re-solidify that foundation that may have whacked or quaked and cracked and needs reinforcement. So that might be new systems or new team members or a reset of expectations, even on yourself and what you can do or what other people can do. But like when things shift, you can't keep operating it the way that it used to. And you need a little downtime to stand back and say, okay, what needs to get healed or integrated energetically, emotionally, or actually like tangibly in the business.
Yeah, I love that. I love the bucket as well. I think it's helpful to know that there are buckets. It can help us see things in a more manageable way rather than just like all of the things.
Yeah, this is what my whole trifecta is about, is actually giving you a map. And that's why I call it the GPS as well, because as entrepreneurs, we need a different kind of GPS, right? It's not these like standard paved roads and where there's like light fixtures and it's all dialed in. Ours are like landmines and detours and all these different things. Yeah.
I love it. Our roads are Tulum roads, not Cancun.
Amazing. Yeah.
Reference for anyone who's been to this area of the world. I'm sure there's an equivalent in a lot of other areas. Bali.
I was just gonna say, anytime our friend in Southeast Asia, very similar.
Yeah. Our road, the rice paddy.
This exactly. That's a road. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've definitely wound up with my GPS and been like, there is no road, and then all of a sudden been like, oh, there's slightly less grass here, and there's some rocks under it, and it's about this angle, but okay, here we go. About moving
over this like river where you're halfway in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Talk about like nervous system. Like so much of this comes back to when we're talking about even the physical fitness and the mind over matter. So much of this is what is the capacity that your nervous system then is regulated to. It has the capacity for, in the sense of when it gets intense. And this is another one when it comes to this rapid growth, is making sure that you have the self-awareness to ensure that you're not inadvertently like derailing yourself or sabotaging yourself every time that new learning edge is encountered. Because sometimes we'll hit that, oh my God, and it's so normal, but there's ways to ensure that it's not as extreme, or at best to shorten the recovery time. So even if you do hit this learning edge and it freaks you out energetically, emotionally, or something on your team goes haywire, that we're able to shorten that recovery time.
I love that. And I think the nervous system is being talked about more these days. I think that we probably can't talk enough about it. I'm a big believer in tangible and intangible, and absolutely having the balance. But my own experience of understanding that and understanding what the shifts are, it is wild, right? If you think about a car running on 5,000 RPM, like you will burn it out and you have no acceleration, right? You need to be And that's why we change gears in cars, is to get acceleration. And if you're already at the max RPMs, you can't accelerate. Like literally, you can't. You
I
can
love
hit
that
gas as you
metaphor.
want.
Yeah.
You're not. And if there's no more up gear, then you can't drive
Right.
your RPMs. You're just where you are. And I think,
Which, I mean, is such a powerful testament to like how, when I say this all the time too, I'm sure you probably do in some way, shape, or form, is like that whole slowing down is so required for speeding up. It
yeah,
is, we have to, and that's exactly what we're talking about with that like leverage of the gears is if you are in full force go, like you have actually no leverage there. You have nothing that you can shift, not the least of which is that from a relationships point of view with whoever you're serving or your team, that there's this expectation that has no, it's just not okay. You're working in these realms of black and white when actually life is needing to actually know how to navigate all the grays in between.
yeah. And I think it's even just, and this is where I think coaching is probably really helpful, especially if you have been running at that kind of pace for so long. The recognition of what the different states actually feel like, I think is something that with the pace we run at, technology, which is such a nice numbing tool, pros and cons, like everything has a use, but I think it can be hard to recognize. I know I recognized when I made one of the big transitions in my life and career journey that I needed some transitions and I had some support through that, but I still honestly just didn't have the level of self-awareness to really be able to know what the different gears were. But I
Mhm.
remember, and it popped into my head, Bali story, one of the first times I was living in Bali, I had been probably about 8 months out of corporate life. And I was on the back of a Gojek. For anyone who's not like familiar with Southeast Asia, taxis are not just cars. You can have a taxi on a motorcycle, which is great because you can navigate traffic a lot easier. And I was on the back of a Gojek and I was on my way somewhere and my Gojek almost had an accident, a pretty bad one. Thankfully we didn't, but it was like a
Sure.
real close call. And my nervous system just went through the roof. Like I was about to be seriously injured. And I had this rush of sympathetic nervous system, right? Your fight or flight. I had a level of like anger, which I didn't know how to express. So I didn't say anything, which is a whole other conversation. But I had this rush of anger. I had felt all of these things. And this is in a split second. And
Right.
in that moment, I realized that I had indeed done a lot of work to come down. And the anger was actually at how familiar this feeling was because I used to live feeling that way all the time.
Mm. Wow.
And it was such a powerful moment of because I'd been doing all this work and I was still struggling. I was still having a lot of things I was still figuring out. I was still overworking, but it was, I needed that contrast of that moment to be like, I used to feel this way, not 24 hours a day, at least a majority of the hours in the day. And my anger was not at my driver, although I was frustrated. It was this moment of intense, oh my God, I used to feel this way all the time. Like I remember I would cry. Like it was really intense. And I think that was one of the first times where I really understood just how big of a range we actually
Mhm.
can experience. And that was probably 5 years ago, at least, starting to actually be able to understand and be more aware and therefore more intentional with managing that.
Yeah. Wow. And I am a huge fan of this. This is like the training that I received as a somatic coach is really having this awareness of the fear moves that are often how we respond to triggers and how that shows up in your body to have awareness of it so that if you are triggered like in a client situation or in somebody on your team or with your partner or what have you that you can really now in the moment it's like it's total ninja level if in the moment you can actually navigate it but at minimum the more body awareness you have like that and this is something I work with all my clients is because every single experience we have just like that you get to then reverse engineer and go, oh, that's what that feels like. Right now I'm out. So if you have that again, and you can even name it, right? Like how it's feeling in your body and noticing then also how it like shuts you down. Yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day. I think it's so powerful because we usually do a series of these fear moves, right? If it's like that fight, but then you shut down. So then there's a little bit of a flee, like I can't even talk about this, or a faint where you all of a sudden feel really tired. So yeah,
Yeah.
love the topic of all those things because it's so key for, especially when we're in leadership. We're not just isolated. We have to actually be in relationship with ourselves and with other people.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it, like you said, it's that awareness. Of course, we want to expand our time between stimulus and reaction and be able to be ninjas. But the more you understand it, the faster you can recover. And also the more intentional, right? Like I said to you, if you are going to live the next 6 months feeling like you're about to be in a car accident, that level of like stress, would you choose that? Would you, even if you don't know a lot, you would probably know that's exhausting. That's not sustainable. But until we can have that perspective, I think
Yeah.
a lot of us just until we
Well, and when you
don't,
yeah.
so we can
And
go
when you
on.
don't have the awareness, what happens is it comes out sideways and we're judging ourselves or blaming others. And it's tangled. And so that's a lot of the work I do is like untangling the very tangled emotions and tangled responses because it's coming out sideways because we can't see it clearly. But when we can clear it all up and clean it all up, and then be like so powerfully intentional in the way that we are behaving and responding. We're not going to be perfect till the day we die. Like genuinely, this is what we're here for. But we can absolutely make great strides in improving that then make a difference for everybody who we come into contact with.
I love that. And I think it's such a good reminder is again, until you do the work, you actually don't even know where all the
Yeah.
all the impacts are.
Well, and I would also even add until you even get to the next level, right? Because that's actually precisely again, right? The spiritual and personal growth journey that we're on because every single new level of growth or what have you is going to present you with some new opportunities to practice flexing these muscles that you've been working on. It's awesome.
Absolutely. So we were talking about how this isn't sustainable. I know I've hit walls a few times in my development. And while I don't think burnout is a new concept, it's definitely something that has a more recognizable name, is getting a lot of attention these days. I'm seeing it in so many emails, articles, LinkedIn titled like coaching specifically for this. And I would say at this point, it's the minority of people I know that have not experienced some form of burnout, which is scary to think about. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs facing burnout? Because it is very real. It, for those of us who are quote unquote fortunate, it happens as we exit and we can take some time and figure ourselves out. But I think for most, there's at least elements of it that happen in a time where it's a little more difficult to just hit pause and hit the beach.
100%. Yeah. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention just capitalism, which is there's just a massive inequality of wealth and kind of erosion of the health of our people and planet right now. And I also want to address that burnout isn't just from working really hard. That's a huge part of it. And no matter even if you're just so aligned and you're loving it and you're lit up and you're obsessively doing it, which I love, it can be so addictive actually. But I also believe that collectively we are experiencing just a massive like emotional burnout as well. Ultimately, in a lot of my work is we need to look at where there's a misalignment somewhere. How are we getting in our own way? Or the other side of that same coin is like, how do we need to be supporting ourselves? And again, if we look at this through the lens of that we only know what we know and we will always gravitate towards what we know. Sometimes we can't see possibilities for how that might shift. Certainly also if you are in this massively constricted place. Usually when you are in any kind of burnout, you're not resourced. So you cannot see it. You're like this because you're just crushed under the pressure of whatever that burnout is. This is the big thing. And I think that if the last couple of years has shown us anything, that we need to find a way to prioritize support and not isolating, but making sure that you're getting into nature, laughing, playing, not taking things so seriously. It's very counterintuitive when actually it's feeling like the world needs us to be taking shit pretty seriously. But I feel like this is the delicate balance of being a human who cares, right? Because everything is going to feel so intense and so hard. And yeah, not all of us have the luxury of going to Bali and what have you. But I do believe that this is the big shift that we're seeing, right? That no matter who you are or where you are, what do you need to reclaim for you? And what do you need to stop doing maybe? Where are you overgiving, or maybe where you need to set boundaries, or where you need to just reclaim anything for yourself to bring yourself some more joy. This was my huge priority last spring, about a year and a half ago, was my like biggest priority I just was like, I have got to prioritize my joy and aliveness. I had hit a massive time of, I wouldn't even call it burnout. I feel like it was like a death. Many people in my life died. Many things were just dying metaphorically and physically. And I was like, I have got to just, I am not going to be good for anybody until I find my way back to my joy and my aliveness. And that is what so many people, it's not easy. Oh my God, are you kidding me? And yeah, your income will probably suffer. Relationships might suffer. And it doesn't always seem like it's an option, but ultimately you have to find a way, because we need you to find a way. Otherwise, you're not going to be good for anybody, including yourself.
I think there are a few things you said there I want to just highlight for if you're listening to this. Entrepreneurship tends to be a little bit of a lone wolf, right? And I think it's a misnomer, because what we don't see behind the scenes, right? Like even these people who rise to the top and have these particular personalities that maybe don't align with what you and I are talking about as good leaders, there is someone, this is why they bring in people to run their operations who are people who can be their chief of staff or their operator. So I want to remind you, if you are earlier on or not even in entrepreneurship, but considering it, a lot of the stars, the unicorns, you're seeing the tip of that iceberg. You're seeing somebody who is maybe very unique and very bright, but did not get their company off the ground by themselves without being good at people, being in touch with themselves. They're the outliers. And actually most successful people who you may never hear about are people who go through these journeys. And the overgiving is the other thing, right? I just came back from an event and I was with all kinds of hyper successful people. And it was a real good reminder. They are all so giving. And I think that is amazing. And most of them have been through some very hard time, the depths of the depths. And we can overgive, right? And so when you combine the fact that we think entrepreneurship is this lone wolf thing and it can feel really isolating, and a lot of us are overgivers, a recipe for disaster. And I know for myself, there have been these layers or levels of learning to look for support, learning to ask for support, learning to accept support,
Receive support. Yeah.
and it has literally changed my life. So from just looking for someone to give me some objective challenge and space when I was looking to leave corporate and make some decisions, which was like leave partner track without a job. That's it. But I was like, I just want someone to help me think this through and make sure that I have objectivity, all the way to I've just exited my startup. I have been working myself to death during the pandemic. I am an athlete in my identity. You talked about identity earlier. Yet for the last year, I have barely been able to train due to both time and physical pain. So I don't feel at home in my body. And getting initially, and I bring this up so people can see the levels, I moved back to Toronto to deal with post-merger integration. You literally couldn't get a trainer because of the pandemic restrictions. So I made a buddy, like an accountability buddy agreement with a friend of mine who was in a similar situation. And we did that for about a month and a half until training opened up. And then I got a personal trainer, and that meant I was paying someone a lot of money, especially in Canada, and much more expensive than here. And I had appointments in my calendar, and I showed up to them. And I never didn't show up to them because, oh, let me sit with my co-founder and go through the finances with him because that's really important. It is important, but it was going to happen before or after that appointment. And in the past, it always would have been like, oh, we'll just go to the gym an hour later. But actually it ended up being 3 hours later, and now it's closed. And now I'm just tired. And then. So without boring anybody, I just want to give some different levels of example. And then obviously therapists, coaches like yourself, and more like the energy and spiritual side, really direct, targeted support, bringing people in who are amazing at something. The resourcing one resonates with me. I read an article, I want to say it was probably by McKinsey, right around the time I left corporate. And it was the first time I'd heard under-resourced links to burnout. And it made so much sense to me. And I actually think it was the first time I realized that's what I was experiencing.
Yeah. And this is having that accountability and support. To me, I'm just a huge fan. Just same with you. Like one of my businesses and the first 10 years of my business was, I call it like, it was like my boot camp for kicked my ass in learning how to ask for support. It was a business that I could not do alone. And it was like, joke's on me, because you got to learn. You got to learn how, and it's going to be vulnerable AF. It's going to make you see all your weaknesses that you didn't want to look at that are real convenient. You don't have to look at those when you're being lone wolf, but it will show you as soon as you have a team or have to call in support, let alone then graciously receive that support and let go of that control. There's so many aspects that are massive lessons. So that's beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I think wherever you are, if you're listening to this, there's different areas, because I knew how to run a team. I'd run multi-million-dollar projects and huge teams, and yet I didn't know how to ask for support in other areas that were holding me back or weighing me down. So I think this also not a one and done on the theme of it. So we can't gloss over the fact that you're writing a book. You're about to publish your book. That's so amazing.
I'm so stoked.
Tell us about the book. What prompted you to write one?
Yeah, this book, the actual idea came to me in 2016, and I started writing it in 2017 and 18, and then it got shelved in a big messy pile in 2019. And fast forward, truly unbeknownst to me that this would be how last year went, but I went on that path, right? Like I said, I've just really needed to come back into my aliveness and realign, which I had created this entire alignment trifecta in 2021. And so I had all the tools, but man, we need space to do that integration, that healing and integration. That's exactly what I set out to do. And basically found myself back in Thailand finally after so many years through the pandemic, was able to get back to my beloved Thailand. And I was like, you know what? I think now is the time. And I ended up starting writing it from scratch and wrote it in 6 weeks. I had some help. I did not do it on my own. Thank God for my book writing coach. But I rocked it out in 6 weeks. And it's now, of course, taken the full last year of like massive structural edit and rewrites and line edits, which I'm just now in the tail end of. And it's going to probably be published next month, which is so exciting.
Amazing. Do you think that books reach people in a way that the other kind of arenas of your work, coaching, speaking, they don't?
Yeah, I'm excited because similar to you, I've been like a high level, high paid coach for a long time. And so for me to be able to, I do a ton of free stuff. I have tons of free stuff out there. But in terms of me literally like opening up my entire model and everything. And that's really, I can't put everything in there. Believe you me, I tried. Ask my editor.
But editor's there with the pruning shears.
Oh my God. No. Killing my darlings left and right. But ultimately, the whole thing is, oh my God, I get to put this in the hands of so many people. And that is so beautiful. We do the work that we do to help change lives and help support people. That's my mission, especially when it comes to this very like poignant piece of it, which is navigating the inner work as an entrepreneur and navigating, especially as a woman, and navigating power and really being able to step into that. The title of the book is Double Down on Your Genius. And the tagline really describes what the book is, which actually follows the trifecta really well as well, which is own your gifts, align your actions, and flourish in your calling.
I love it. Oh, so we will make sure when we publish this as a podcast that we have all the info on where to find the book, because it is going to be out next month, not out yet. Before we wrap up, I have a few questions I like to ask just for people to get to know you outside of what you do, which for a lot of us is all-consuming passion, but there are other layers.
There are. Yeah.
So they're pretty rapid fire. You can always pass if you're not, with nothing coming to mind. So the first one, is there an experience that changed your life? Something you went through?
Yeah. I would say hands down, the biggest life trajectory changer for me was when I moved to Southeast Asia in 2014 and just basically started living life as an expat. So that's been almost 9 years now, and lived in Hong Kong. Had quite the spiritual awakening in Hong Kong, of all places. It's where I chose to stop drinking, stop doing any recreational drugs, and really set me on a new level. I've always been very spiritual for a long time, but it set me on a whole new level, which I'm so grateful for. And it was also, I talk about this in my book, it was quite intense as well. But yeah, that just setting me on the new path of living as an expat, and talk about even learning your relationship with time and all of that. So powerful. Yeah, exactly. Across the world, halfway around the world. Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Is there a book that you read at some point that really changed your perspective on either a particular area or on the bigger picture?
So many books. I have this on my website, all my recommended books. And it's funny because I would normally say this one, which I'll say both of them. But what flashed in my mind, and I really trust this, is I started reading Shakti Gawain way back when I was probably 18 or 19. And she wrote a book called Creative Visualization. She wrote a lot of books, but one of them was Creative Visualization. And I think it's still such a huge foundation of the work that I use today, which is how do you want to envision your life? How can you actually really put that energy into the vision that you want to create, and consciously create your life with that vision? And then I'll just also add my mentor. I was trained by the Hendricks, so Gay and Katie Hendricks, and they've written a lot of amazing books. But the number one book, and I'm a certified Big Leap coach, is Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap. Yeah, it's huge.
Love that book so much. Most people I know, that book has come into their life at the right time, and myself included. I was I can't believe I never read this sooner. And then I was no, I read this right when I needed it. So I love that. The last question I have for you, if you could go to any concert tomorrow, touring or not, dead or alive, what would it be?
I want to see Lizzo so bad live. I love, love, love Lizzo, but I really love the idea that I could just mash this up, or maybe have an opener. I can have both of them in the same show, and I would 100% love, and I really wish I got to see Prince live. So I would have it be Prince, Lizzo concert. Who's coming with?
All right. I love that answer. I love that. Willo, it has been an absolute pleasure having you. We've gone deep. I never know what I'm going to share on these things. It brought up, and I think probably the same for a lot listening. So thank you so much for coming on, for sharing. You just have this amazing light about you from the first time I met you, which I normally start with, but was in a cafe nomading.
Yeah.
And then we realized we had all these interconnections in our network and our story. Thank you for being here. If people want to reach you to continue the conversation or understand a little more specifically about what you offer, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, so I am Willo Loves You on everything. And there is even if the book isn't actually out by the time you hear this on the podcast, or for any of you watching it live right now on LinkedIn, there is a sign up and hear about all the launch stuff that is at willowlovesyou.com/book. And you can find that link in my Instagram bio and everything as well. So just Willo Loves You on every platform, willowlovesyou.com.
Such a great name or domain to have. I love it. Thank you, Willo. It's been wonderful. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and so excited to talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Our goal is to create connections and inspire conversations about building great companies. So please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast with your network. Sharing is caring. If you're a business leader or executive team ready to take your leadership and company to the next level with high-performing teams, we'd love to see how we can rocket fuel your growth. Check out the show notes to book your free Builders Business Booster call, where you'll receive a strategic leadership assessment and 3 concrete focus areas to mature and grow your business. You'll also find the link to join the Builders Club to stay up to date on upcoming events, get valuable tools and insights, as well as be the first to receive exciting announcements straight to your inbox. No spam, I promise. You'll also find my website, alexsnyder.com, and all the places to peep my creds, hear what clients have to say, and see if I went to the gym today. And one final note, this podcast is not intended to be legal, tax, or other professional advice. Thanks for joining. We'll catch you on the flip side.